Most men step into the world of seduction the same way a blind man wanders into a maze, feeling for direction, stumbling over their own uncertainty, convinced they lack beauty, money, or clever lines to be desired. But the truth is far more uncomfortable and far more liberating. You are playing on hard mode, not because you are unworthy, but because you cannot see the invisible rules. Seduction has never been about force. It has never been about over-effort. It has never been about emotional pressure. Seduction is the art of shaping perception. Robert Greene says it clearly. Power is not doing more. Power is making the other person feel exactly what you intend them to feel. And once you apply that principle to female desire, everything clicks into place. You begin to understand why so many men fall into the same exhausting loop. They give everything away before the game even begins. The average man believes that being pleasing increases attraction. In reality, it makes him predictable. So he shrinks himself to appear interesting, he over-explains to appear trustworthy, he reshapes himself to appear desirable. And the more he does that, the more presence he loses, the more depth he loses, the more value he loses. Because there is a quiet mistake, a hidden self-sabotage that destroys every opportunity before the interaction even starts. The trap begins with a simple confusion, mistaking female attention for female approval. A woman looking at you does not mean she liked you. It only means her senses registered your presence. But the needy man, starved for validation, interprets "I noticed you" as "I want you." And the moment he does that, he hands over the entire game. He exposes too much intention, too much energy, too much hunger. He loses the battle before he even steps into the arena. Modern research only confirms what the psychology of power has whispered for decades. In 2023, the University of Rochester showed that men who try to please too quickly, the ones who rush to impress, are instantly rated as less desirable. The female brain links that excessive eagerness to emotional fragility, dependency, and low selectiveness, traits that signal risk, not value. And here is a truth the average man refuses to confront. When you look anxious to be accepted, she immediately files you under too available, too easy, too predictable. Attraction does not grow in predictability. It grows in contrast. And contrast is the birthplace of masculine magnetism. This video is a cheat code because it exposes what almost no one dares to explain. The psychological patterns, the hidden microsignals, the instinctive triggers that spark female desire long before a word is spoken, before conversation, before a compliment, before the interaction even begins. Desire is born in the invisible. Desire is born in the quiet moments. Desire is born in the way you hold space, in the precision of your gaze, in how your energy shapes the atmosphere around you. The man who masters the invisible level never chases attention. He provokes it. He does not try to be chosen. He becomes inevitable. And it is inside this subtle, decisive territory where 80% of seduction truly happens. What you are about to learn is not a trick, not a memorized line, not performance. It is behavioral strategy. It is psychology in motion. It is the art of reading emotional currents, recognizing what creates desire and what destroys it. It is learning to operate at the level where the female mind makes its fastest, most instinctive, and most silent decisions. And the deeper your mastery of these invisible rules becomes, the clearer the entire game appears. Seduction was never hard. What is hard is playing blind. What is hard is competing without knowing the structure behind her instincts. What is hard is relying on tactics that only work for men who understand nothing. Today, you step into a higher tier of the game. Today, you will see things as they actually are. Today, you receive the first fragment of the cheat code. The rest begins in the next chapter. But before anything else, you must confront the psychological error that destroys 90% of men before they even realize it's happening. Every man who has ever tried to attract a woman knows this feeling, the exhaustion of doing everything and receiving almost nothing in return. You talk, you compliment, you show interest, you try to be kind, trustworthy, agreeable, you try to become the man you think she wants, and yet something still collapses. There is an invisible barrier suffocating any chance of real attraction, a barrier with a name: over-validation. The silent self-sabotage that turns men into anxious applicants, desperate for approval she never requested. When you treat a woman like an unreachable trophy, you immediately position yourself below her, emotionally and psychologically. It does not matter how confident you try to appear. Your emotional signal always arrives loud and clear. You validate me. I need to be accepted. I am terrified of messing this up. And no woman feels desire for a man who, even without speaking, asks for permission to exist beside her. Its origin is biological. Evolution does not care about your intentions. In 2019, David Buss demonstrated that women are extremely sensitive to the emotional cost of being involved with a man who displays dependency, anxiety, or instability. The female brain does not interpret emotional neediness as charm. It interprets it as risk of drama, risk of chaos, risk of emotional burden, and instinctively, she steps away. It does not matter if you are polite, gentle, or hardworking. If your energy carries the scent of neediness, she labels you as high investment, low return. And her brain makes that judgment in seconds. What most men never grasp is that attraction is not the reward for effort. Attraction is the reward for contrast. When you are emotionally self-contained, you stop trying to be chosen. You stand with weight. You move without fear. You neither chase connection nor run from it. This balance creates magnetism. Because in the female subconscious, a man who does not seek immediate approval is automatically categorized as more valuable, more selective, more grounded, and therefore more desirable. The less you try to impress her, the more she becomes curious about you. The less you explain yourself, the more she fills the gaps. The less you chase, the closer she moves. Science continues to confirm this contrast. In 2022, researchers at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology discovered something powerful. Men who carry expansive body language, grounded posture, and a calm, steady speaking rhythm are consistently rated as more attractive, more dominant, and more emotionally solid. Not because they say anything brilliant, but because their very presence radiates internal certainty. Women do not judge you by your words alone. They judge your rhythm, your firmness, your presence. A man who occupies space naturally, without forcing it, signals dominance. A man who speaks slowly signals control. A man who takes a deep breath before replying signals confidence. And confidence ignites curiosity every single time. Applying this is simple, but it demands self-awareness. Before you say a single word, fix your presence. A deep, grounded breath. A neutral, aligned posture. Direct eye contact, steady, not tense. A slow, stable rhythm when you speak. A response time that does not expose anxiety, because attraction begins in the first 30 seconds, and within those 30 seconds, 3 silent mistakes kill everything. Explaining too much, trying to please too soon, showing interest before she shows any. Remove these 3 habits and your presence transforms. Adjust these signals and her entire perception shifts. Control them and you finally rise above the 90% of men who lose before the interaction even begins. This is the hidden architecture of female desire, the code she never verbalizes but always obeys. Most men begin to fail at a very predictable point. They start trying to prove their worth. They talk endlessly. They justify themselves. They explain who they are, what they do, what they want, believing they can build attraction with words. But to the female brain, that excess does not create impact. It creates exposure. And too much exposure kills mystery, kills tension, kills magnetism. When a man tries to persuade a woman that he is worth her time, he exposes his fear that he might not be. And fear, in this context, evaporates desire instantly. The feminine does not respond to long speeches. It responds to posture. It responds to emotional rhythm. It responds to the way you place yourself in the dynamic, not the effort you make to impress her. The man who embodies value always outshines the man who explains value. Female tests come directly from this truth. And no, they are not cruelty, they are ancient emotional safety mechanisms. Jungian psychology calls it shadow and projection. Women are constantly scanning for one thing: whether the man standing before them is emotionally stable enough to handle the intensity that will surface later. That is why she provokes, why she challenges, why she contradicts, why she falls silent, why she observes in total stillness. It is not hostility, it is an evaluation, a filter, a fast instinctive test of your internal structure. Daniel Kahneman's work on social heuristics explains this perfectly. Humans make snap judgments from the smallest signals. She does not need a deep conversation to know if you crumble easily. She sees it in micro reactions, shifts in tone, tiny hesitations, and bursts of emotional tension. And the moment she detects emotional fragility, she withdraws, instantly. The breakthrough comes when you finally grasp this truth. Female attraction is not fueled by predictability. It is fueled by controlled ambiguity. When you offer presence without urgency. When you are kind but anchored by boundaries. When you are available yet never surrendered. When she senses interest from you but never need. That combination creates contrast. Contrast creates tension. Tension creates curiosity. And curiosity is the very first stage of desire. The man who reveals everything at once loses his advantage. The man who leaves intentional empty spaces controls the narrative. When she cannot fully read your emotional script, she begins trying to decode you. And the moment she tries to decode you, she is already invested. Harvard's 2021 research supports this. Moderate unpredictability, not chaos, not manipulation, but natural emotional variation, significantly increases romantic interest. Men who shift their emotional rhythm, sometimes intense, sometimes neutral, sometimes direct, sometimes reflective, ignite her attention and engagement. Her brain keeps asking, is he a challenge? Is he a reward? And as long as she is trying to answer that question, she remains involved. This is not manipulation, this is human psychology. But applying it requires precision. Use strategic silence when she pressures you for an immediate answer. Respond to her tests with calm. No emotional spikes, no approval seeking, no justifying yourself. And above all, place yourself as an option, not a beggar. A solid option does not persuade or plead. He simply exists with presence, firmness, and quiet clarity. When you embody this, she notices something most men never convey. A man who does not ask for permission. A man who does not collapse under emotional pressure. A man who does not bend to her tests. That is the man she follows. That is the man she chooses. That is the man who begins playing on a level most men do not even know exists. Now we step into the neurochemical dimension, the one factor that determines whether she feels drawn to you or completely indifferent. The biggest trap men fall into today is not emotional, it is chemical. We live in a world where every notification, every like, every tiny reaction from a woman triggers small hits of dopamine. And without noticing it, the man becomes hooked. He starts confusing validation for connection. He mistakes a reply for interest. He interprets attention as desire. Before he even realizes it, he is surviving on emotional crumbs. Crumbs that make him more anxious, more reactive, more blind. This silent addiction destroys a man's social instincts. He loses his timing. He loses his ability to read emotional cues. He loses his posture. He loses the game before he even walks into it. Because the man who relies on micro rewards does not lead an interaction. He gets led by her. What most men never understand is that the female body responds in a completely different way. In 2020, Stanford University found a direct connection between male emotional stability and the activation of the female reward system during social interaction. In simple terms, the more emotionally regulated you are, the more pleasure her brain experiences when interacting with you. Neuroscience confirms what evolutionary psychology has hinted at for decades. Women bond with men who regulate their energy, who control their emotional rhythm, who do not swing wildly like emotional children. What triggers attraction is never desperate intensity, it is internal consistency. And here is the twist. Deep attraction is not created through intensity, it is created through emotional rhythm. Women bond with men who build tension through their eyes and release it with their voice. Men who move between silence and presence with precision. Men who know exactly when to advance and when to hold still. Researchers call this soft dominance. It is not aggression. It is not robotic coldness. It is elegant self-command, the ability to control your energy so she feels stability and magnetism at the same time. A man with emotional rhythm stirs something inside her, without exaggeration, without spectacle, without theatrics. This effect becomes even stronger when the body reinforces what her mind already sensed. In 2019, the University of Michigan found that in speed dating scenarios, small male micro-gestures, a slight forward lean, steady, unbroken eye contact, a deliberate pause, significantly increased female interest in the first seconds. Stable body language, grounded posture, and controlled expressions trigger her evaluation systems, pushing her brain to categorize you as trustworthy and attractive. Repulsion, however, is triggered by the opposite: agitation, anxiety, rushing, and micro-expressions of insecurity. Applying this with precision transforms any encounter. To modulate intensity is to speak with a calm, unhurried rhythm, to use your gaze as a bridge, not a plea, to create micro-tension that pulls her in. Holding half a second of silence before you respond, shifting between solid presence and subtle relaxation, this calculated oscillation creates a deeper connection, the sense that you notice more, feel more, and perceive the nuances most men never see. When you master the chemistry, you master your impact, and when you master your impact, you master desire. The man who understands the invisible rules always wins. And here is the truth most men never dare to face. Seduction was never about looks, clever lines, or luck. It has always been about internal architecture. Emotional control outweighs improvised charm. Strategic ambiguity outperforms obvious effort. Neurochemical rhythm defeats desperate intensity every time. And all of this aligns with a principle Jordan Peterson repeats again and again. Internal order creates external direction. When a man takes command of his own mind, his behavior shifts, his posture sharpens, his energy strengthens. And women sense that shift before he says a single word. Everything you have learned here rests upon 3 pillars that elevate a man above the average. First, internal control over external validation. You do not chase emotional crumbs, you do not beg for reciprocation, you do not trade your stability in the hope of being chosen. Second, strategic ambiguity over emotional predictability. You do not unload your life story in the first 5 minutes. You do not over-explain who you are. You do not expose your intentions before the moment requires it. Third, neurochemical rhythm over impulsive intensity. You modulate tension, you guide the atmosphere. You create presence through silence, gaze, and cadence. When Jordan Peterson speaks about radical responsibility, he is not only describing the disciplined professional, he is describing the seductive man. The man who understands that women do not desire emotional chaos, but direction. They do not desire emptiness, but stability. They do not desire excess, but mastery. Attraction is psychological, not physical. It is mental, not aesthetic. It is energetic, not performative. And in seconds, women can feel who governs himself, and who is still chasing approval. They never say it out loud. They never explain it. They simply sense it, and silently choose or silently walk away. The masculine path is simple, but never easy. Everything you learned must become daily training. Each environmental reading, each calculated silence, each boundary you enforce, each decision made from self-command. The average man reacts to the world. The man who masters the invisible rules shapes it. From this moment forward, you choose whether you move like a lost player or like a man who finally sees the architecture of the game. Before we end, here is the unexpected piece, the 7-second test. When you begin any conversation with a woman, perform 4 silent actions: neutral, grounded posture, firm, unbroken eye contact, a minimal, controlled smile. 1 full second of silence before you speak. This sequence activates the value reading circuitry in her brain. In an instant, she recognizes that you are not desperate. You are operating from a different tier of masculine presence. Master this tiny ritual, and you are already playing in advanced mode. The rest is refinement. The rest is intention. The rest is choosing whether you remain like every other man or finally become the one who learns how to win.